Hi and welcome back. In the last video I talked about use case diagrams and how they link human actors and technical means with each other in visualizing a concept that you have chosen and already started to develop. To arrive at a comprehensive solution though, we have to dig deeper and really model out how the central use cases will be realized. For that you can use a variety of flow or sequence models that either focus on the flow of different system functions, if your solution is a new product, or the flow of new service activities, if that is what your solution will be. The model I'm going to show to you today is called IDEF0. The reason for choosing this particular model is that, quite similar to the use case diagrams you saw last week, it can describe products, services, or their combination in a comprehensive illustration. It originates from applications in systems engineering and complex system design in general, but has recently advanced into the service domain as well. Some advantages of using IDEF0 are, for instance, that it's a visual way of communicating information, makes it easy to understand across different domains, be it in design or in business. Also, it breaks up a complex idea into smaller temporal steps that can be modeled in more or less detail depending on what you need. And having such a visual, step-based representation of your concept eventually also allows you to show it to customers or a target user group early to obtain feedback. Now let's get started, shall we? What we do to get started is to take the main use case that defines your solution from the use case diagram you modeled last week. We, however, here will take the example of the bike rental service again that we also used last week. And now we really drill into this and model out what's really there in detail. As a heads up at this stage, while modeling your use cases in detail, you may find that you have to revisit the original use case diagrams again and adapt it to a new situation. And that's perfectly fine. As I mentioned in the first video, conceptual design is an iterative process. IDEF0 uses boxes for individual steps and arrows to indicate inputs and outputs linking the steps with each other. As a vantage point, you can use your main use case as a first box. In the example from last week, this was to rent a bike. Then we determine the overall state change associated with this very use case. As a start, you can simply say that the customer is on foot and wants to have a bike. At the end of this particular scenario, he or she should then hopefully have obtained the bike. At the beginning, it's really as simple as that. Next, we need to add information that is relevant for realizing this particular step. So we need to identify resources or third-party actors that are essential for this. Here, it is fairly clear that you need bicycles to fulfill this service and to have already we've already spoken about rental or service stations. And this is exactly where you build the bridge back to the original use case model, and thereby also include again the central stakeholders that your solution is built around. Now, to complete this box, we add relevant control variables or information that is critical to the service delivery or function fulfillment, like the maximum duration that the bike will be gone, and naturally you might also want to know who took it away. And this is really how you end up with your first completed box. And the next step we will detail this further. Here it really comes down to you, and that's important. You have to start drilling into this box and dissecting it into sub-steps. The fact that you need to identify the customer already tells you that there needs to be an additional step in which his or her identity is obtained. This again tells you that there is some sort of technical means or service personnel required to realize this step. Furthermore, the customer has to get to the actual bike station and somehow actually select or obtain the bike. This is really how you can use logical, causal reasoning to determine the specific steps that will be required to realize the rental service. If you take a look at the new model, you can see that the overall state change is still the same as in your very first box. So it is really about taking apart the use case into all the little bits and pieces that are required therein. And every time you get a new in-between state, and for every new block, you should determine the relevant information inputs and resources required. Thus you gradually build up the full model as you go. Try to stick close to the state changes. Logically, they give you a very good indication of what the activity leading to it needs to look like. Take any example, like you are in place A and you want to get to place B. That's a state change. And the activity or functionality realizing this state change will be some sort of transportation. In determining which resources to allocate to each individual step in your model, you gradually set up your solution as you go and what it looks like. And there are multiple options usually, and you really can make the decisions. So it's you who determines the essence, what your solution will be in the end. If later you change your mind, go back and adapt the model. Particularly in the beginning, that will happen a lot. But just be aware that changes may affect other parts of your model and consequently also your solution. Now, you may find that in setting up the IDEF0 for one use case, you automatically integrate one or more other use cases into it. And that's perfectly fine. In fact, it makes your flow model much more comprehensive. And eventually, you should model out all your use cases with an IDEF0. When you have a final or somewhat final model, you can think about optimizing your solution as you go along. Start analyzing each individual box and ask yourself, are the same persons or the same equipment in use in different steps? Does that create critical bottlenecks in the current flow? Are there critical performance enablers or barriers? And if so, then try to resolve any potential problems. Can you, for instance, tweak the order of steps or the usage of equipment to make a better flow? In the course material, you will find an example of an IDEF0 for the in-flight services we used earlier. And in the final assignment for this week, we will ask you to create an IDEF0 for your central use case in your solution. A final note on this, though, an IDEF0 is meant to complement the use case models in representing how your solution realizes the desired outcome. When it comes to services, however, it can be beneficial to add representations of how the recipient will experience the service to make sure that it's convenient to them. To visualize this, you can use storyboarding, service blueprints, or custom activity cycles, for instance. But another model that is really particularly nice for doing this is a customer journey map. These really focus on the customer, and in the following video, you will really hear about the benefits they can also bring to you in setting up your solution.